Hello, welcome to our second episode. Today is all about rear crosses. We got a question from Anne. It was a great question. She wanted more on rear crosses. And Charlotte had a great question. Her dog's spinning the wrong way on rear crosses. And so we're going to show you exactly why that happens. We're going to show you how to fix it. We've got two really good training tips for your rear crosses. And we're going to start with a demonstration here so we can kind of see what's going on. We're going to have Trek do a couple of different things. First, we're going to have Trek come down this line. She's going to start at the cone way back there, take this purple jump, and then end up here. And we're just going to first have Trek just turn to the left for reasons that will become clear in just a minute. On the second repetition, we're going to have Trek do that not very good front cross that often creates the spin in the wrong direction. And then on the third repetition, we're going to show you a really good rear cross, hopefully, where she's turning the correct way. So let's go ahead and bring Brittany and Trek out here. And I'll step out of the way. Very nice. So now Brittany is going to come with the rear cross. These jumps are spaced 20 feet apart. So 20 between the jumps and another 20 to the cone. And that's a great example of what's happening to a lot of people out here in dog agility. The handler comes in to do the rear cross, and the dog is just turning the wrong way, and they end up spinning. You lose a lot of time there. We're going to go ahead and have her do another left turn so the dog is not patterned to think they're correcting a mistake. Oftentimes in training, if a dog knows they've made a mistake, they'll try something different on the next rep. And we don't want the dog to do that. So we're going to make it tougher by having her do that left turn again. Now we're going to go for the rear. All right, and there we get a nice rear cross. The dog turns in the correct direction, and that's really what we're looking for. And so what I'm going to do now is, well, she's going to hold the camera, so no venture demo, due to our technical difficulties. And so I'm going to bring Brittany back out here, and we're going to talk a little bit about what you just saw. And basically, what you're seeing is we are not getting the information to the dog in a timely manner. In addition, some of our rear crosses look like other cues we are using, namely the turn. So let's get Brittany out here. She's just throwing on her shoes. And actually, we'll stand just right here in front of this jump. So we're going to pretend that Brittany and I, we're a young couple. We're out shopping at a mall somewhere. We're walking side by side. She's a little ahead of me. I want her to see something to her right. There's two ways we can get our dogs to turn in agility. The first one is a verbal cue. So no matter where I am, I can always say, Brittany, look right. Okay, and Brittany is going to look to the right. This has the advantage of being position independent. It means I can stand anywhere. I can crouch over here. I can be very far away. I can be on Brittany's right side. Anytime I say, look right, Brittany is going to look right. Okay. That's the power of having a verbal cue. So a lot of people combine their verbal cues with their rear crosses to ensure that their dogs turn the correct way. So you would need to teach that skill. An important consideration is that right always means Brittany's right, not my right. Let's say Brittany is facing me, and I want her to look at this chocolate candy in the window that we're going to buy and eat after dinner later. I can't say Brittany turn right. I need to say Brittany turn left. And then she's going to turn and face the correct direction. So when you're using verbals, remember, it's always with the orientation, the dog's orientation, not necessarily the handler orientation. You can go ahead and turn around. And so that's why people find it confusing. Now, when we were getting set up for this jump, let me bring Brittany over here on this side of the jump. The reason that her dog was coming over here is when you do great rear crosses, it's stepping behind the dog that gets them to turn the right way. So if I want to show Brittany something over here at the store, I step behind her, I'm popping up into her field of vision, her natural reflex is to turn toward me. She notices something, I'm no longer over here on the left side, she's going to naturally turn to the right. This is what is cueing your dog on these rear crosses. And so we want to be in a situation where we tap the dog here and let them know that that turn is coming. And by cutting across behind them, rear crossing, we are doing exactly that. But what Brittany was doing on the bad rear cross was running at this cone and looking like she might do a turn. So Trek is taking off, anticipating the turn. The dog is getting ready to turn. At the last second, Brittany changes her mind and jumps and rear crosses the dog and hopes that the dog is going to read that rear cross. The cue is just too late. It would be like doing this with Brittany. We're out here shopping and I do this. She's going to turn the wrong way and she's going to feel silly, okay? Common elementary school trick, something my son and I like to do and mess with each other, okay? But we are not in the business of fooling our dogs. We want to give them all of the information early, in advance, in a timely way. So we need to tap our dogs on the correct shoulder. And we're going to do that by driving to the correct cone. So instead of rear crossing, coming up here, faking the dog into thinking they're going to turn and then suddenly rearing, we're going to do what Brittany did and run this line. So I'm going to ask Brittany to go ahead and get Trek again. She's going to demonstrate the exact same thing she just did, except now you guys know what you're looking for. You know exactly what to watch for. I want you to watch how when Brittany does a turn, a simple turn, she's running for this cone. When she does the bad rear cross, she's also running for this cone. So the two cues look very similar, creating confusion. And when she does her really good rear cross, she's driving for this cone over here. She's tapping Trek on the correct shoulder to create this turn. Very nice. So everybody take a look. Is the dog jumping here or here in the middle? What direction are they facing? So you'll notice this time Trek did not give you a spin, but she landed angling this way and you got an unnecessarily wide turn where you lose several tenths of a second. And that was a beautiful demonstration. You see that Trek took it on a slice on this half of the wing. So we have very different performances. On the bad rear cross, Trek is jumping this side of the wing, angling that way, and has to turn in the flat. Over here, she's on this part of the wing, and she's angled in the correct direction. This version of Trek is going to beat that version of Trek every single time. And you guys, when you do 2 or 3 rear crosses on a jumper's course, can save over 1 second on every single run by making this very small change in how you do your rear crosses. The cones are very, very helpful, so you can set them up and kind of see how you're doing it. The best way to see what you are doing, of course, is to videotape yourself doing these rear crosses. But you want to run for this diagonal. And that's why we have the little cone here. Let me show you the handling. When you're coming down this line, I like to think I'm running an imaginary line from this wing to that wing. My arm commits the dog to the jump. So I use a lot of arm cues, upper body kind of oriented that way. My lower body and the rest of myself is headed in the direction that I want the turn. So this arm helps them take that jump and stay committed to the jump, and then I'm going to catch up and meet the dog over here. One more benefit you get from that, compared to doing your rear crosses over here, you can see that if I'm over here, it's a long way to go to catch up over here. Have you ever had to do 2 rear crosses in a row, but because you were so far behind after the first rear cross, you couldn't do a good second rear cross? Those days are over, because now you're going to do your rear crosses like this, and when your dog lands, you're going to be able to meet them right here. And you don't have to be this close. For those of you who are more distance handlers and are you get caught very far away from the dog, I can be way back here. And if my dog is about to take off, the same rules apply. I commit to the dog, my dog is jumping, and now I can meet them here and send them on that way, pull them back this way for a front cross, bring them in and reward them with a toy or food here. So it can all be done from a distance. I'm going to go ahead and give you 2 tips. Let me grab a toy.
Before you do your tips, Christine wants to know, would a go-on command help drive a novice dog to the second jump to help with the rear cross?
Yes, Christine, a go-on command would help a novice dog to drive onto the second jump, especially for those of you handlers who happen to fall far behind from the dog. But the go-on command should really only be to go and take a jump straight. Whether the dog needs to turn left or right, they need some kind of other input. So in a verbal system, I would say go on left, go on right. And that's if they're body independent. If you need to use your body, and I'm still far behind, and my dog's about to take off, and I'm way back here, so let's say my dog is up there by that first jump, I would say go on, so they're going to take that jump. As they're taking off, I'm going to say right, or if I have no verbal, I still want to cross, because it's the actual physical motion of crossing that's going to do it for the dog. If I stay on this side, and I say go on, and the dog goes on, and I don't give any other commands, I naturally expect the dog to curl toward me looking for a reward or an obstacle to take in that general direction. Okay, so tip number 1, I know what a lot of you are thinking. If you get close to your dog will refuse to take this jump. And that happens a lot. When dogs do that, I consider it a training issue that you need to work through. A dog has to improve their commitment in spite of whatever else you might be doing with your body. This applies to everything: A-frames, dog walks, weave pulls. I like to put a toy in my signaling hand and throw it through the upright. This is going to teach the dog to accelerate past you and commit to the jump even as you move behind them. And it's going to look like this. You're going to send the dog, you're going to tell them over, or whatever your word is for jumping, and you're going to fire the toy even as you cut behind them. And with practice and repetition, the dog is going to chase their reinforcement. You can also put a food bowl out here. You can have an assistant out here with a toy or food as well. You do a bunch of reps like that. If you get in like 10 of those repetitions in just 1 minute, every 6 seconds your dog is getting some food, your dog is going to develop a lot of value for driving forward even though you are pushing and pressuring their line. And so that's going to really improve. All right. And then second tip was we had the toy. We had going at the angle. Let me see. What was it? I dropped my paper. Hang on just a second. This is why once you hit the big 4-0, you have to write things down sometimes. So I had to out my age. Oh, letting your dog get past you. Okay. So the other issue is, this happens a lot with sometimes slower dogs, or for those of you who have dogs, sometimes they run fast, sometimes they run slow. You walk a course thinking you can do front crosses, and suddenly your dog runs a little faster than you were expecting, and now you can't make that front cross. Now you have to do a rear cross. And so you run up here, you can't do your front, and now you're going to do a rear, and it turns into a bad rear where you're aiming at the wrong cone. Okay, so the trick is to hang back and let your dog come past you. I like to kind of slow down in the area at the jump before the rear. So if I know I'm going to rear up there, I'm going to let my dog pass me up. That's the entire point of the rear cross, that I can safely get behind my dog. So I'm going to let my dog get ahead of me, and then I'm going to go, okay? Rather than getting to the jump at the same time as my dog and then trying to cut them, okay? So that's the second tip. So first tip, teach your dog to accept pressure by using reward placement. Your second tip is to actually hang back and let your dog move past you. And then once they've moved past you, now you're safe to really speed up and drive and get more speed out of them. And you'll see a lot of improvement in your rear crosses.
We have a question about confusion between
Okay, we have a question.
and a K-turn.
Okay.
As this person says that, this is Daniela, and she says that when it looks like you dip your shoulder as you crossed on the rear, but that she slightly dips the shoulder on the K-turn, which leads to him turning the wrong way. Would it be right to assume that the shoulder dip should only be used with the rear cross?
That is an interesting question. Daniela was talking about confusion between rear crosses and K-turns. I will tell you that, generally speaking, in terms of international handling, a lot of handlers were shying away, at least before this past year, from the rear cross because of issues, potential issues of confusion. Not just with what you're talking about, K-turns, Yako turns, things like that, but just wraps. So wraps are very common in international dog agility, where the dog needs to turn this very tightly. Trainers spend a lot of time teaching dogs to wrap tightly. And coming in here from all these different angles, especially these slice angles, let me show you this. What if I'm coming from this direction, and now I want the dog to wrap this way and head out in some direction this way? That is going to look very similar to if I cut behind them, and now I want them to go this way and rear cross. This is that rear cross versus wrap confusion. This is kind of a big topic and something that we're not really going to talk about today. I think just the point of it is that anytime two cues look similar, there can be confusion. So Daniela, you were talking about how I do the rears. Everybody's going to look a little bit different. So here I agree, the way I ran it, there does look like a shoulder dip. And if you come in with your K-turns and you do something like that and it looks like that, you may very well have some confusion. So I think that's a situation where you want to videotape yourself and see just how similar you look when you're doing the two maneuvers. And if you happen to look the same, then I think there could be an issue.
The other thing that I would say about the rear cross and the K-turn is that's another reason why it's so important to run this diagonal line on your rear crosses so that it doesn't look like a K-turn. The more you condition your dog to rear crosses being very L-shaped and close to the jump, the more that looks like your K-turn. But if you're driving and putting pressure during this whole entire length here between these two jumps, it's going to look a lot less like any of the other maneuvers. So you want to build that pressure in so that you can be putting it on the dog the whole entire time they're taking this turn.
So in all our cueing, that's what you're striving to create very clear-cut, different-looking cues when they mean very different things.
So we had a question.
Okay, we have another question.
Somebody said hanging back causes the dog, this is Charlotte, hanging back causes the dog to stop motion or causes the spin before jump two. So now we're talking about a spin before rather than a spin after the jump.
Right, so that's probably not a rear cross issue per se, it's a commitment issue. And for dogs like that, it would be useful at times you fall behind to teach a go on command.
I think the throwing of the toy, to reiterate the throwing of the toy.
Right, and anytime you're teaching them forward motion, the easiest way to do it is to use a placed toy. So let's say I want the dog to go over, and hit this target. I'm just going to place a toy out here. And I'm going to start from way up here with my novice dog. I'll have someone hold the dog there and I'll release it. I'll say over, get the toy. On the next repetition, I'll step back. Over, I may take one or two steps. And I'm just going to keep moving back over time and over several sessions until I'm standing here and I just take a couple steps and it's over, go on. And I want to say go on as soon as they're landing here. Oftentimes people are saying it too late. So if you're saying go on and your dog is still spinning, the cue is coming too late. Okay, as soon as the dog is like over this bar, they should already have a very clear understanding of where they're going. So you probably need to get your cueing out a little bit sooner. But using a placed toy or assistant or a food bowl or a target is usually how most people do that kind of training. All right, are there any other questions before we wrap up? All right, thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, like, heart, so that I know that you were getting something out of this one. We really want this to be driven by you, the audience, so keep coming with your comments. Go ahead and post comments. Even if you're watching this on the replay, we do go back and look at the comments and answer questions. And any topics that you would like addressed, especially these things that you might consider beginner topics, things that you've been unclear about for years, issues that you're running into, you don't know why. We're here to help you. This show is for you, our audience, so feel free to bring your comments and questions. All right, that's it. We will see you next week. Happy training.